The rain begins as a fine mist, brushing against the wrought iron gates of Arkham Asylum. The structure rises in the distance, cloaked in the gray haze of Gotham's unsettled skies. Its towers and wings seem not to grow from stone, but to lean into shadow, as though they have been shaped by the memories of those who entered and never fully returned. The gates, tall and blackened with rust in their corners, appear almost ceremonial, less a threshold of passage than a silent warning. One might notice how the lamps at the entrance sputter against the damp, their glow never quite steady. They cast long, wavering shadows across the path that curves inward, a road once intended to be welcoming when Arkham was a place of promise. In its earliest days, the institution was not yet burdened by infamy. Records describe it as a hopeful venture, a place designed with wide courtyards and windows meant to draw in the light. Gotham's papers of the time referred to it as a sanctuary for the troubled mind. Yet, with every decade, those intentions grew more distant, as though they were swallowed by the very corridors meant to heal. The path before the gates is cracked with age. Weeds press upward between the stones, curling with persistence despite the trudge of boots and the roll of patrol cars that pass through. Even the rain pools unevenly, gathering in shallow depressions, reflecting faint images of the looming asylum beyond. The main building stands like a Gothic sentinel. Its windows, some barred, others simply dark, resemble watchful eyes. Stone gargoyles perch along the ridges of its roofline, their mouths open in expressions neither fully snarling nor fully amused. In silence, they preside over each new arrival, their stony patience unbroken by the centuries. Through the iron gates, one might notice the faint echo of voices, carried not clearly, but with the quality of distortion. Perhaps they are conversations of guards at their posts, or perhaps a trick of acoustics, for the rain has a way of disguising sound against stone. Closer still, the entrance hall glimmers faintly through the doors. A single chandelier sways with the draft, its crystals dulled but intact. This hall was once used to greet visitors, to reassure families entrusting their loved ones into Arkham's care. Now it bears the marks of countless footsteps, tracked mud, and the lingering odor of disinfectant mingled with something harder to name. If one lingers in thought, the asylum begins to feel less like a building and more like a palimpsest, a history rewritten with each generation of Gotham's unrest. Doctors arrived with new theories. Patients arrived with desperate hope. And in time, both groups left impressions, some on the pages of files stored in thick cabinets, others in the very atmosphere of the corridors themselves. Outside, the rain thickens, tapping against the ironwork like the ticking of an impatient clock. A clock not found on the walls, but perhaps deep within Arkham itself, as though the place keeps time in ways different from the city beyond. In the distance, Gotham stretches outward, its lights dim in the fog. The asylum's isolation is deliberate, built on the edge of the city's less frequented lands. It stands apart, visible, but unreachable in spirit. To approach it is to sense a shift, as though crossing from the ordinary chaos of Gotham streets into a silence curated by stone, rain, and memory. The gates hold still, their iron chilled by the storm. Behind them lies the promise of stories unspoken, of patients whose names were once whispered with dread, of doctors whose theories blurred the line between care and obsession, and of nights when footsteps echoed longer than the corridors themselves. And somewhere in that quiet, the thought emerges: when did Arkham stop being a place of healing and begin to breathe with the unease of legend. The halls of Arkham Asylum carry a weight heavier than stone. Inside the main building, the first corridor stretches with a length that seems disproportionate to the space. Its ceiling arches high, lined with lamps that flicker in a rhythm not entirely steady, casting shadows that expand and contract like a pulse. The floor, tiled in worn patterns of black and cream, bears the scuffs of countless boots and the faint drag marks of gurneys that have been wheeled toward their destinations. You notice how sound behaves differently here. A guard's cough travels farther than expected, echoing faintly even after it ends. The rattle of a key ring seems to stitch the silence together, one note at a time. And always, beneath these human sounds, there is the background hush, the layered quiet of distant footsteps, muffled voices behind locked doors, the hum of old radiators that exhale unevenly in the damp chill of Gotham nights. The air is thick with a medicinal tang. Disinfectants are used in generous measure, masking but never fully erasing other odors. The damp breath of the stone walls, the faint trace of oak from records written daily, the fabric of old uniforms folded in storage. Every inhalation here is part of the asylum's history, an archive of treatments, experiments, and long hours spent in watchful care. On the left, framed photographs line the corridor. They are the kind of portraits intended to inspire confidence. Men in starched coats, women in formal dress, all identified by their titles and years of service. But the eyes in these photographs often tell another story. Some are proud, yes, but others bear the fatigue of impossible work, or the faint spark of ideals long pressed under routine. Dust clings to the corners of their frames, even as the rest of the hallway remains carefully maintained. The pictures remind the observer that Arkham's story is not only about its patients, but equally about those who came with intentions of order, only to discover how order bends beneath strain. The asylum was not always so expansive. Its earliest records speak of a modest building with sunlit wards and gardens designed for calm walks. Families would come on visiting days, and patients would be encouraged to write letters, their handwriting carefully preserved in folders still stored in Arkham's archives. Yet, as Gotham's population grew, and its streets birthed new troubles, the asylum grew with it, not in harmony, but in defense. Additional wings were built, courtyards narrowed, and the bars on windows multiplied. Healing gardens became enclosed spaces, their greenery fading into shadows. The more the city demanded control, the more Arkham reflected containment rather than care. One might pause near the first junction of the hallway, where a door leads into the records room. Within, the cabinets stand in rows, each drawer labeled in precise black ink, case histories, A through D, transfers 1920 to 1935, staff notes, restricted. The paper inside smells faintly of dust and ink, a library of lives cataloged and stored. To leaf through even one file would be to enter another world. A patient's quiet drawings, a doctor's terse notations, the gradual shift of handwriting over years of treatment. Some files are thin, reflecting short stays. Others are thick, swollen with added pages, the stories of lives folded into the rhythms of Arkham for decades. Deeper within, the asylum reveals its layers. The East Wing, older and more worn, bears windows with thick bars that divide the outside world into narrow slices. Beyond them, the gardens appear distant, as though glimpsed through a memory rather than a present reality. The West Wing, by contrast, is newer, its design more clinical, with cleaner lines and harsher lighting. Patients in these halls are often quieter, not by choice, but by medication. The difference between wings is a map of changing philosophies. One built when optimism still lingered, the other designed when efficiency became a priority. The staircases spiral upward with the faint creak in their iron bones. Each landing holds its own stillness, as though waiting for footsteps to disturb it. A single window on the third landing opens a view across the river toward Gotham. On nights when the mist rises, the city appears as a blur of lights, indistinct and far away, while Arkham looms closer, immediate, and inescapable. Guards patrol with the steadiness of ritual. Their boots strike the same places on the floor, their lanterns casting circles that overlap in predictable rhythms. Their conversations, when they occur, are brief.
Night descends fully over Gotham, and Arkham Asylum stands outlined in its own silhouette, tall against the restless glow of the city's horizon. The rain has softened to a mist again, fine as breath upon glass. Its touch blurs the lamps along the drive and beads upon the railings of the gate, each droplet a lens that refracts the faint fire of distant light. The air is colder now, carrying the scent of wet earth and the faint, metallic tang of iron. Inside, the day's movements have diminished. The guard's steps are fewer, measured against the turning of the hour. Doors remain locked, lamps burn low, and files are returned to drawers where the whispers of case histories sleep again until morning. Silence, deep and steady, takes hold of the corridors. It is not an absolute silence. Arkham never offers that, but a layered quiet, woven of softened sounds, a cough somewhere far off, a sigh from an old radiator, the shuffling of a blanket as a restless patient finds a new angle of sleep. The great hall near the entrance is almost still. The chandelier sways faintly in the draft, scattering light in slow, deliberate gestures across stone and tile. The benches that line the walls stand empty, polished by decades of waiting visitors. Some carried flowers once, some letters, some the simple weight of hope. Their voices linger like a perfume faintly remembered, not audible, not visible, but suggested by the space itself. The asylum's wings stretch out, each a vein in the body of the structure. In the east, where the windows are barred, the shadows of the garden press faintly against the glass. Even at night, weeds find their path upward, and the skeletal outlines of trees draw shapes against the dim light of the moon. A faint scratching sound, the simple work of branches shifting against the wind, might be mistaken for something else, if one allowed imagination to lead. But here in Arkham, imagination always finds room to wander. The West Wing, newer and sharper in its architecture, hums faintly with electricity. Lamps here are brighter, though their glow feels sterile, as if refusing intimacy. A nurse's station, deserted for the moment, holds its tidy arrangement of papers, and a single ceramic mug left half full, cooling slowly in the empty hours. On the desk rests a ledger, its entries marked in careful script, times, doses, observations reduced to phrases, words like calm or restless, repeated in neat succession, as though whole lives can be distilled into single adjectives. Upstairs, the records room waits in its patient order. Files rest in drawers, cabinets closed. The air carries that faint library scent, old paper, ink, and the hint of dust that even constant care cannot fully prevent. One drawer remains slightly ajar, a thin wedge of shadow marking its refusal to close. Within, a file bears the crease of recent handling, the edges of its pages gently bent. Its contents are folded back into place, but one small detail, A handwritten annotation in the margin reveals the hand of a doctor no longer practicing, a voice from years before left like an echo on paper. In the stairwell, the iron bones of the steps hold their silence. No tread disturbs them now, but the air here is alive with memory. The creak of a guard's passage, the shuffle of a stretcher wheel, the sudden sharp rhythm of a patient's hurried stride. These are not present, yet they linger, folded into the metal itself. The small window on the third landing gazes toward Gotham. Tonight, the city is softened by fog, its skyline no more than a suggestion of shapes and lights. Arkham, closer and clearer, commands the frame. From this window, the balance between city and asylum feels inverted, the city distant, the asylum near, as though it is the world outside that lies blurred and dreamlike. Even in its quiet, Arkham does not sleep. Some windows are lit faintly, where patients stir or where staff attend to small duties. Curtains shift with the movement of air. A shadow crosses a wall, pauses, and moves on. These details, subtle and undemanding, form the asylum's night rhythm. It is a rhythm without drama, yet filled with presence. Outside, the gargoyles keep their watch from the roofline, their stone eyes glistening with rain. They have seen generations pass beneath them, doctors and nurses, guards and orderlies arriving with varied expressions, some resigned, some fearful, some strangely calm. The gargoyles carry all of this in their silence, their open mouths neither speaking nor closing, as if an eternal mid-thought. On the lawn beyond the gates, weeds stir with the wind. A bench, once painted white, now bears flaking layers of gray, its boards warped by years of weather. Here, patients once sat under the supervision of attendants, gazing at the sky or sketching upon small pads provided by charitable donors. Some of those drawings remain, tucked into folders, their lines tentative, yet revealing. Crude sketches of flowers, towers, or sometimes faces, fragments of inner worlds mapped onto paper. The bench, now unused, carries the memory of that gentle act of expression. The rain lightens further, becoming a faint drizzle, like a whisper falling across the grounds. It softens the edges of stone, deepens the dark lines of the roof, and blurs the outlines of the iron gates. Drops strike the surface of puddles in measured cadence, forming circles that vanish into one another. And in this softened night, Arkham Asylum seems less a place of menace than a vessel of countless lives. It is filled with voices, some loud, some quiet, some remembered only in faint traces. It is filled with intention, noble, misguided, persistent, or weary. Above all, it is filled with stories, each layered upon the next, until the building itself becomes the archive, its stone a page, its corridors a binding. When dawn comes, the cycle will begin again. Guards will take their posts, nurses will prepare medicines, records will be written, and files placed in careful order. Patients will walk their corridors, sit in their rooms, or speak in fragments that only sometimes carry meaning. And Gotham, beyond the river, will continue to send its troubled, its broken, its dangerous to the gates of Arkham, adding line after line to the story written within these walls. But for now, in the stillness of night, the asylum breathes quietly. The rain is gentle, the lamps burn steadily. The city beyond is distant, blurred, dreaming in its own way. Arkham stands, patient as ever, waiting for the next chapter that will be written in silence, in shadow,
in the soft, persistent rhythm of time. The question lingers like mist. Is Arkham Asylum a place Gotham built to contain its madness, or has Gotham itself been shaped by the silent influence of Arkham's endless watch? The answer remains withheld, folded into stone and shadow, waiting for another night, another telling. The east wing of Arkham Asylum holds its silence differently than the rest of the building. Where the main halls echo with the routine of patrols and the west wing hums with the brightness of its newer design, the east wing absorbs sound, as though the stone itself is unwilling to give anything back. Its walls are thicker, its corridors narrower, and its lamps dimmer, their glow often struggling against the heavy air. The approach begins with a long passage, its floor uneven from years of use. The tiles, once patterned in pale blue and cream, are cracked in places, their design obscured by age. Water stains crawl down the walls where pipes have long since sweated through plaster, leaving behind the faint mark of rust. Along the corridor, doors line both sides, each fitted with a small barred window, some open to the darkness inside, others shuttered against it. You notice how the air changes as you move deeper. The medicinal sharpness of disinfectant fades here, replaced by something older, the scent of stone, wood swollen by damp, and the faint metallic odor of locks handled countless times. The silence carries small intrusions.
The East Wing has long been considered Arkham's oldest voice. Its walls do not simply contain, they absorb. Every sound, every whisper, every sigh that has passed through these corridors seems etched into the grain of its wood and the pores of its stone. To sit within its silence is to sense something dense, something layered, like pages pressed together in a book too vast to ever be opened in full. By the final hours of night, the sound of keys softens to its faintest presence. The rounds have been made, the locks checked, the notes written in the ledger. The keepers sit now in the small stations scattered throughout the asylum, their key rings resting against their belts, still heavy, still silent. The building, too, has quieted, as if the passing hours have lulled it into a state of watchful rest. The silence that fills the corridors at this time is different than earlier stillness. It carries not expectation, but completion. The cells are secure, the doors are bolted, the lamps have been trimmed or left to burn out slowly. Each hallway seems to breathe in long, even intervals, as though the asylum itself exhales after a long day of vigilance. The keepers lean back in their chairs or stand by windows, their silhouettes dim in the glow of lamps. They do not speak often, yet their presence remains a part of the night's rhythm. One taps his pencil against the open ledger, the sound sharp but brief. Another shifts his boots against the floor, the scrape faint, almost swallowed by the thickness of the stone. The keys at their sides rest still, but even in rest, they seem to hold a charge, as though their silence is only a pause between movements. In the older wings, the locks sit deep in their doors, bolts settled firmly into place. The air around them feels dense, as though the iron has drawn strength from the walls themselves. In the newer wings, the locks gleam faintly, precise and orderly, each one a reflection of modern efficiency. Yet in both places, old and new, the doors carry the same weight. Thresholds held fast by metal teeth, and the men who carry them. There is something almost ceremonial about the way the asylum treats its keys. They are never left loose, never discarded casually. They pass from hand to hand with deliberate care, recorded in ledgers, fastened to belts, locked away when not in use. The ceremony is subtle, unspoken, but its presence is undeniable. Each turn of a key is not merely a mechanical act, but a continuation of ritual, a reminder that Arkham is not simply a building of walls and windows, but a structure held together by boundaries constantly affirmed. The keepers themselves, though seldom acknowledged beyond these halls, carry the asylum's weight in their routines. Their lives are measured in locks secured, in rounds completed, in nights passed without incident. They seldom linger in memory, yet without them, Arkham's subtlance would unravel. Their role is not dramatic, not heroic, but essential. A quiet stewardship of order in a place defined by disorder. Some patients, sensitive to sound, wait for the faint chime of the keys as though it were a clock striking the hour. They listen for it in the morning when the day begins, and again at night when the day ends. For them, the keys are a signal not of imprisonment, but of rhythm, a reassurance that time continues, that life has structure even within confinement. Their ears attuned to the faintest scrape of iron, the softest clink of metal against metal. To these listeners, the keepers are not faceless guards, but participants in the delicate balance of existence within Arkham. There are stories, written in the margins of reports, of keys lost and found. A set dropped during a hurried round, clattering against the stone floor, the sound echoing down the corridor like a sudden alarm. Another set misplaced briefly, discovered later resting quietly upon a bench. In each case, the recovery was swift, but the memory lingered. The asylum itself seemed to notice such disruptions, its silence disturbed by the sound of keys apart from their keepers. The echoes carried farther than they should have, as though the building itself amplified the reminder of what could be lost. When the dawn begins to approach, the final task of the shift is performed. The keepers return their keys to the iron-bound cabinet, locking them away once more. The cabinet accepts them in silence, the ring placed carefully on its shelf, the ledger marked with time and signature. In that moment, the weight is lifted, and yet the absence of the keys is felt like a phantom, the hip lighter, the belt looser, the silence deeper. The asylum remains, its locks set, its doors secured. The keepers leave the halls, their duties passed to the next watch, their presence absorbed into Arkham's memory. The sound of their keys fades, but it does not vanish entirely. It lingers faintly in the mind, like the echo of a bell long after it has been struck. In the larger story of Gotham, the keepers of keys may never be named. Yet within Arkham, their sound defines the rhythm of existence. They are the unseen custodians of silence, the ones who draw boundaries and hold them firm. Their keys are not symbols of power, but of balance, a delicate, persistent balance that allows the asylum to endure. And so, when the final door is locked and the last key turned, Arkham settles into its dawn. The rain has ceased, the mist lifts slowly, and the light of the city begins to touch the horizon. Within the asylum, the silence deepens once more, ready to begin the cycle anew. The keys rest, the keepers rest, and Arkham waits. In Arkham Asylum, there is a small office tucked away near the junction of two corridors. It is neither grand nor imposing, unlike the director's rooms in the main hall. Instead, it is modest, a narrow space with a single window overlooking the inner courtyard and a desk scarred by decades of use. Yet it is here, in such unassuming places, that the quieter history of Arkham is often written. The office belongs not to one man alone, but to a succession of doctors who, over the years, claimed it as their own. Their names differ, their approaches shift, but the space retains the impression of each in subtle ways. A faint stain on the wood where a teacup once rested too long, a worn groove in the floor where a chair was dragged repeatedly over time, the ghost of ink blotches that no amount of sanding could erase. At the heart of the office rests a lamp. Its base is brass, tarnished but still sturdy, its shade green with age, edges chipped where fingers have adjusted it countless times. The lamp has been here longer than any one doctor. Its light, warm and steady, has fallen across thousands of pages, case notes, patient letters, medical journals, and idle sketches left in the margins of reports. When lit, the lamp casts a pool of illumination that isolates the desk from the rest of the room. Papers, pens, and files glow softly, while the walls retreat into shadow. The effect is one of intimacy, as though the lamp does not simply provide light,
but creates a sanctuary for thought. Outside, the corridors may echo with the shuffle of boots or the murmur of voices, but within the lamp's circle, only the written word seems to matter. One might notice how the lamp reflects faintly in the window at night. The glass, clouded slightly with age, turns the reflection into something blurred, impressionistic. It overlays the view of the courtyard beyond, weeds pushing through stone, a single tree bent with weather, with the image of papers and ink. Inside and outside merge in that reflection, memory and present folded together. The room smells faintly of paper and tobacco, of ink and dust. Beneath these scents lingers the subtle odor of...
The lamp glows steadily, as it always has, a small sun over the desk of Arkham's many doctors. It is not a bright light, not harsh, but deliberate, a glow that seems to encourage concentration, to draw the eyes downward toward the paper spread across the desk. Within its circle of illumination, details sharpen, the grain of the wood, the faint shadow of a pen, the careful arrangement of case notes. Beyond its reach, the room retreats into gentler shadow, bookshelves sinking into half-darkness, the rug beneath the chair fading into obscurity. To spend hours here is to learn the rhythm of the lamp. At the start of evening, its glow feels strong, energizing, as though the brass and green shade carry with them a promise of industry. As night deepens, the light grows softer, though not in brightness, rather in perception. It seems to merge with the silence of the asylum, becoming less an instrument of work and more a companion. The longer one sits at the desk, the more it feels as though the lamp is not merely illuminating thought, but keeping watch with it. One might picture the doctors who sat here, some bent low, scribbling in quick bursts, their pens scratching furiously across paper. Others leaned back in their chairs, fingers pressed to their brows, eyes half closed as they searched for words. Each doctor brought his own manner, yet all left behind traces, notes folded into files, annotations in the margins, letters that remain in the archives. The lamp bore silent witness to all of it, its glow steady, impartial, patient. There were evenings when the lamp was the only light in the building. During storms when power faltered, its brass body shone in defiance, casting its circle upon the desk while the rest of the asylum sat in shadow. Guards would note the faint emerald glow seeping through the crack beneath the door, a quiet reassurance that someone remained at work, that thought continued even as thunder shook the windows. For them, the lamp was not only a symbol of diligence, but of stability. If it was lit, Arkham itself seemed steadier.